Hello everybody, happy Christmas. Hope you're all having a great day. I wanted to do a video where I run through my entire year and cover all the main points. It's been an interesting time for me. I was, this time last year, Christmas Day, I was in Elmley prison, fairly close to finishing off my sentence. By this stage I'd served over 8 years on my second prison sentence, and I had about 4 months left until I got out. So my Christmas Day consisted of working. I was the number one servery worker on the induction wing in Elmley. My job was to just oversee food service, make sure everyone got what they had asked for on their menu sheets, and just to kind of make sure that everything was running as smoothly as possible with food service. I'd been thrown out of open prison a couple of months previous to Christmas. I'd had a falling out with the people that I was working for while I was in open prison. I went out every day, 6 days a week, and the job turned out to be a complete disaster. The people that gave me the job were essentially, it was all fake. It was just a waste of my time, and it wasn't the ideal way to sort of to finish my sentence. And the idea was that I would carry on working for these people when I left prison. It was never going to work. The whole thing was just a sham, really, and it cost me dear in the end. The people I worked for told me they were letting me go in October, and they made it very sudden. I asked for a few days just to sort of tie up all my loose ends before going back to the prison for good. They refused that, and they emailed the prison that day and told them that they didn't want me to work for them anymore because they couldn't afford to pay me, which was true. They couldn't afford to pay me, but I'd been paying my own way to come out to work every day for the previous 3 months. So I don't really know what happened, but they made a snap decision and I was gone. Worse than that, they then called the prison and told them that I'd stolen a set of their office keys. That was a complete lie. I hadn't stolen their office keys. When they told me that they didn't want me anymore, I was in the office on my own with my set of office keys that had been given to me from the first day I worked for them. I had to lock the office, and I had to take the keys back to the prison with me, as I always had done every day for 6 months. I don't know what possessed them to call the prison and tell them that I'd stolen their office keys. I hadn't. I couldn't leave the office open with my keys on a desk, could I? Anyway, so I took the keys back to the prison because I'd locked the office up, and the plan for me was to go and give them their office keys back on my next home leave or town visit, which was due to be a week after I was actually thrown out. Anyway, I was thrown out, and that was that. So I spent the last 6 months of my sentence back in closed prison, not going out to work, not doing anything really, just waiting to be released. So eventually we got to April this year, and I was released from Elmley. In the build up to my release, there'd been a couple of things that I needed to sort out. I had nowhere to live, so I spoke to the people that worked in the housing department of the wing I was on. They were really quite good with me. They helped me quite a lot, and they told me some things that were important to know. They were adamant that because under new kind of guidelines that had come in during my sentence, they said to me that because I had served more than 5 years on that sentence, then I was officially classed as institutionalised. And on that basis, I would be made a priority for housing. So I did quite a bit of work with them to get things in place. And as far as I was aware, I would have been a priority for housing when I got out. Also, in the build up to my release, I did speak to my probation officer twice. Had quite a couple of long conversations with him by video link from the legal visits part of the prison. I remember the first time I spoke to him, I went away thinking I wasn't very positive about it. He was African, and honestly, I did find it difficult to understand what he was saying at times, and I felt a bit embarrassed to keep asking him to repeat himself. And it just a few things that he said during that first kind of interview, I just wondered whether we were going to be able to have a kind of nice rapport with each other. So I was a bit concerned about that. I went for a second meeting with him by video link, and that was around about Christmas last year, and that went a lot better. We got on pretty well, and he was quite a good guy. He explained to me my license conditions as he would have them, and I felt a lot better after that second meeting. Unfortunately for me, and what I didn't find out until one day before my release, after that second meeting, he said to me that he would arrange a third meeting, video link, before my release. And I never heard anything, and it was getting close to my release. I think I had about 2 weeks left. And I asked the housing people to make contact with him because I was expecting to have heard from him it was, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks before my release, and I hadn't heard anything. So they contacted probation and were told that he'd left. I'd never been told, so it kind of threw things up in the air a little bit. And then the day before my release, I was introduced on the phone to my new probation officer. That first conversation didn't go particularly well at all. I was told by her that I would be sent to a bed and breakfast in Slough, which was nowhere near where I lived. I've never lived anywhere near Slough. So that was a bit of a shock. I tried to argue the toss and said that I needed to be closer to my people, and she said, well, you're going to the bed and breakfast in Slough, it's part of your license conditions, there's no debate about it. So that was that. She also set out a list of license conditions, I didn't really take a lot of notice of. I was still in prison. I thought, I know it was the day before my release, but I was going to see probation immediately after release. So I just thought, I will look at all the license conditions when I get there. It will all be written down on a on a memo or whatever. So I left it at that. But I finished that phone call, and I just thought, this woman doesn't sound like it's going to be a very positive experience. So I was released from prison on April the 21st this year. I had £385 to my name. That was it. My girlfriend Emma, she collected me. The first thing I did when I got into her car was make a roll-up. I had been smoking before I got thrown out of open prison, and I hadn't had a roll-up for 6 months. I could have not bothered, but I just fancied one, so I made a roll-up. And my first port of call was the job centre where I was planning to live. Went to see them, started a claim for universal credit, asked for an advance, which I got a couple of days later. I knew I was going to need the money. And then literally next door to the job centre where I was my probation office. Went in there. My probation officer was on leave, so she wasn't there. I had a kind of a stand-in who explained to me all of the license conditions, what was expected of me, what I could do, what I couldn't do. And there was also a police officer in the probation office in the meeting. And she was related to the serious organised crime prevention order that was served on me back in 2015. The order itself started the day I was released, and again carried another whole set of rules that I had to stick to. One of the things I did at that meeting was tell them that I had a job lined up. I'd actually sorted all of that out while I was still able to come in and out of prison, in open prison. I had my qualifications, so I'd been offered a job that would start a week after my release, and that made me a health and safety advisor in construction. I'd done my NEBOSH level 3 during lockdown in prison, passed all of that, got the qualification, and so yeah, a week after my release, I started my job part-time as a health and safety consultant, and I was really glad to have that. Just one other thing, on the day of my release, so it was kind of a normal day. People asked me, did you do this, did you do that? I didn't do a lot, really. By the time I'd finished in probation, it was sort of mid-afternoon. What I did then, I think I popped into town just to get something quickly to eat. Did that, and then I went to my mum and dad's graves, and just had a sort of 10-15 minutes of quiet time. I played them some music, one of their favourite songs each, and then I left. I think I got an Indian takeaway, and then I had to drive to Slough to my new accommodation, which was not great, but it was a bit like being in prison, really. I walked into the room, it was messy and kind of dirty. The bed sheets were all dirty. I remember that. I slept fully clothed the first night because it was just it was dirty and horrible, and yeah, I just kept all my clothes on and went to sleep. I had to see probation a couple more times during that sort of first week out. And again, I just got the impression that my probation officer didn't particularly like me. That didn't really matter to me, but it came to sort of a couple of weeks after I got out and I saw her again. And yeah, I just said in the end, look, I get the impression that you don't like me. I said, look, you don't have to like me. That doesn't matter. We don't have to like each other particularly, but we do have to work together, and you do have to do your job, and part of your job is to help me out, and you're not helping me out at all. You're just giving me the kind of third degree all the time, which is understandable. I had no issue with that at all. I knew that I'm in my area under the probation I'm with. I am high profile. I've done 2 big sentences. I was a major drug dealer. So, of course, I know that they were going to kind of keep a very close eye on me, but I just felt I had to say that, that she was actually meant to help me as well as kind of keep a tight leash on me. She just denied everything, and so we kind of just left it at that. During interviews with her, it was just, I didn't really understand it. She spent a lot of time asking me to run through my entire childhood, my early years. I didn't really understand what the point of all that was, and I didn't ask, because where I really got the firm impression that she didn't like me, then I kind of went into my shell a little bit. I remember thinking I had to be very mindful of what I was saying to her. I didn't feel like I could be completely upfront and honest about stuff, because it was all being tapped away on a keyboard, and as I said, I couldn't really understand the purpose of that. And so I kept what I said to more or less the minimum, and that's the route I went. It's just not ideal at all, and probation, really, it shouldn't have worked that way for me, but that's how it went. So after a couple of weeks in Slough, I was then moved to a place called the Number 5 Hub in Guildford. I spoke to the guy who was dealing with me there on the phone a couple of days before I went there, and he asked me if I was working, and I said, yeah, I've literally started work today, part-time. I'm a self-employed health and safety consultant. And he immediately kind of, I don't know, it just made him a bit strange, really. And he started talking about me having to pay £500 a week to live there. And he started asking about all kinds of confirmation. I need to see this, I need to see that to do with your work. And I said, well, I've literally just started today. So he arranged for me to go and see him at the homeless shelter the next day. I was asked to be there at 11. I had to reschedule work to be there, but I was there on time. I walked to the front door of the house, and there was what turned out to be an alcoholic. He was drunk. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. He was passed out on the steps of the house, the doorway into the house. So I walked over him, went in, introduced myself to the people that were there, and they said they didn't have a clue who I was. What was I doing there? I said, well, I've been asked to come and see, I can't remember the guy's name now, and they said, well, he never starts work till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that was not a great start there. Anyway, they told me to come back later that day, and I was given a sofa to sleep on, a blanket, no pillows, The sofa was about 4 foot long. I'm 5'10". So that was a pretty uncomfortable night. I got up and left early, probably 5 o'clock in the morning. Went to work, came back, stayed there again, was still hadn't met this guy who was supposed to see me. The whole place was kind of off with me. At this time as well, I'd applied for to be put on the housing register with Guildford Borough Council. I was having problems with them as well. They didn't want me. They said that I should only apply for housing in the under the council that my daughter lived under. And I tried to explain to them that I'd been told in prison that because I was classed as institutionalised, I was allowed to apply for housing wherever I wanted, wherever in the country. They refused to acknowledge that. They said that they had never heard of anything like that, and so I was stuck really. They were saying one thing, the prison had told me another thing. I think it turns out that the prison had completely misinformed me, and obviously I was out of their hair now, so it didn't matter to them. That's how I saw it anyway. So I had the homeless shelter being really off with me. The Guildford Borough Council didn't want to register me for housing, so I was kind of stuck. I spent a second night on the sofa in the homeless shelter, and then on the third night, I got an email. It was about 7 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday, an email from the guy who had been asking me about my work. And the email said, I need to see your contract of work, your pay slip, and I need to see proof of your contact with HMRC regarding your taxes. I emailed him back and I said, look, I have explained this to you already. I don't have a contract for work because I'm self-employed. I don't have any pay slips because I will invoice for the work I do at the end of every month. And I've just started work, so there is no invoice. And I also said, I have no contact with HMRC because right now I don't have to have any contact with HMRC. And those were all correct responses to what he asked for. So I sent the email. I got a reply about an hour later, about 8 o'clock on Saturday night. And he said, right, on the basis of what you told me, you won't be allowed to stay here. So that caused absolute chaos. In the email, he said, you can come and collect a sleeping bag from us. And I immediately got on the phone to them. The guy who sent the email apparently was busy and couldn't talk to me. So I explained to the woman who did answer the phone, look, it's my license conditions. I have to stay at your place. Otherwise, I'm in breach of my license conditions. And that means I will be put back in prison tomorrow. Her response was to say, oh, sorry about that. And that was it. And these people were responsible for looking after me in that sense. They had to have me there. So I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come and collect that sleeping bag, and I'm going to sleep on your doorstep, because that way I'm not breaching my license. I'm on your property, as I've been told I have to be. And she said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I don't want to do it, but I have to do it. I'm not going back to prison. Anyway, long story short on this, I called emergency probation services, and I also called emergency social services. And this is on a Saturday night. The emergency probation officer, who was linked to the office where I was, she was really good actually, and she said to me, do you think just for the time being you'd be able to stay with your daughter as an emergency measure? And I said, absolutely, 100%, my daughter will have me there. So she spoke to my daughter, that was agreed, and that's where I went under emergency procedures. I was actually ready to hand myself into Guildford Police Station that night because I thought it was the only chance of me saving myself from being recalled. I probably would have spent the night in the prison, in a police cell. I don't know. Thankfully, we never got to that, but there was probably every chance that I would have been recalled back to prison after 2 weeks. So that was not a great time, but we did get it all sorted, and I ended up staying at my daughter's and with her boyfriend there as well. For 15 nights. I was only supposed to be there for 2 or 3 nights, but eventually probation found me a new homeless shelter in Woking, and I went there, and that was fairly decent. I had a room with a door that I could lock. I could come in and out more or less as I pleased, and that was the kind of first period of being a little bit settled. I got some help there with my housing register application as well, so that was good. At the same time, probation was still being not brilliant with me. I have to be careful what I say about probation, by the way, because I've already had an official warning for what they called. Well, I'll explain the story. When I was at the homeless shelter in Woking, I was also encouraged to try and find my own place, and eventually I found a room for rent in Aldershot. I went there. I had a brief chat with the landlord, who was the owner of the house. He never asked me any questions about myself, and he said that he was happy for me to move in, just needed to get a deposit. So what I had to do then was contact probation and explain to them this is what I'd like to happen. And their job then is to do their kind of due diligence, check the names of the people in the house through the police. Their kind of protocol is that they would then visit the place and speak to the landlord. When I called probation, my probation officer was on leave again, so I couldn't speak to her. I spoke to another probation officer, and she told me that I had a right to non-disclosure, which meant that the probation couldn't tell the landlord what my previous crimes were. They weren't allowed to tell them. So I thought, okay, well, that's potentially useful. I hadn't told my potential landlord anything about my past. That was on the advice of probation as well, just to say very little. I wasn't legally obliged to say anything. Anyway, things dragged on, and I was trying to contact my probation officer. She never replied to me. I left voicemails, I left text messages. Eventually I did catch up with her, and she said, yeah, well, I haven't had time to do anything with it yet. And I said, well, look, this room won't be held forever. He wants to rent it out, and you're kind of holding things up. I don't understand. And she said, well, I have to go and see him, and I have to speak to him. And I said, okay, well, can you just explain to me how that ties in with this non-disclosure? And she said, what are you talking about? I said, I've been told that I have a right to non-disclosure. I explained the conversation to her, and she said, I've never heard anything about that. And I said, well, she actually said, no, that's not true. And I said, well, how can it not be true? I've been told that by probation. Now you're telling me that it's not true. I don't, like, somebody's wrong. It's either you or it's someone else, but you need to sort it out. Anyway, I decided at that point to just take the bull by the horns. So I drove over to this potential place of living, and I spoke to the landlord and I told him everything about my past because I just thought it would be better coming from me. He agreed and he was fine with it, so that was really great. And I just felt that my probation officer she didn't like me. I felt like she was deliberately kind of being difficult about it all. So I called her, left messages, didn't get a reply, but the messages said, look, he knows everything now, so you need to go and speak to him, do whatever it is you do, and let's get this finished so that I can move. No reply from her again. So eventually what I did was call probation and ask to speak to a management level probation officer, which I did. I explained the situation. She said that it was completely unsatisfactory and she would call me that afternoon and explain where things were. So I waited. I then got a text message that afternoon from my actual probation officer, and she said, your move has been approved. You can arrange to move in whenever you want. And I won't be your probation officer anymore. Your new PO will be in touch with you. And finally, at the end of that long message, she then said, and by the way, I'm issuing an official warning to you for misrepresenting probation on TikTok. This was by the stage that I'd started my TikTok account, and yeah, I did, during this whole kind of farce, I did a couple of videos where I explained what had been going on with probation and why it was completely unsatisfactory. There was no misrepresentation in there at all. I didn't tell any lies. I told the truth about how I was being treated. I was complaining about it a little bit in those videos, but I had every right to complain. I was being messed about with, and it was obvious. So I got this official warning about my how I was talking about probation on TikTok. And then I did move into the new place, and I thought that I would be able to get myself settled and organised there. It didn't really work out very well. The landlord was a bit odd, and he kind of moved the goalposts on me once I'd moved in. So I had moved in, my sister had helped me with the deposit, and then he decided to tell me that I wouldn't be allowed to have any visitors there. And I swallowed that, but obviously I was really unhappy about it. I didn't understand why that was the case. He explained to me that it was because one of my housemates kept bringing young ladies late at night, and they would be staying over the night. And he said, if I allow you to have visitors, then he'll just take it as a green light to do whatever he likes. So yeah, that was a little bit upsetting, but I was there at the time. I'd moved in, so I just thought, okay, well, let's just suck it and see. I did quite like living there. I did settle to a degree. I didn't really have anything to do with my housemate. By that time, one of them had left, so I was left with this guy. He was kind of strange. He was from I think he was from Zambia, and he was claiming asylum. I don't know the details of it. I never spoke to him, if I'm honest. He was an oddball. He didn't lift a finger around the house, so I was cleaning up after him, tidying up after him, and I got kind of irritated with that quite quickly. At the same sort of time all this was happening, I was working, and I then was working full time, which was good. a little bit hectic. I never really got a moment to myself, and I'd started this TikTok account really just by chance. The idea actually initially was I just wanted to speak to people and sort of gauge whether there would be any interest in the book that I was planning to write. Um, so I I got an account on TikTok, and I started doing a few short videos, kind of like this one, just talking about my sort of everyday existence since release from prison. And then a few people started following me, and I would be asked questions about prison, about things that had, gone on, telling people what I'd actually done to get myself landed in prison, and so on. And I never expected anything from TikTok, but it's kind of progressed, and it's been actually on the whole a very positive experience, I have to say. I have a lot of support on TikTok and a lot of what I consider friends now. I've been very fortunate. People started offering to help me out. I'd done a couple of videos about being on, going to food banks and stuff like that, and a few people offered to send me bits and bobs, and I I really appreciated that, but I kind of resisted. I didn't feel comfortable taking things from people, even though they were very kindly just offering off their own back. It took a while, but eventually I did start to kind of gratefully receive things that were offered to me. So that's kind of carried on, really. I now have 7,000 followers on TikTok, and I have received a few Christmas presents, and along the last few months I've had various gifts from people. Anything from tobacco to clothes to trainers. I've had some food vouchers which have been really useful, and yeah, it's been a real kind of positive and eye-opening experience. It has been mentioned in the past by me that I had a bit of a struggle with people trolling me and people trolling supporters on TikTok. I had to learn to kind of accept that and ignore it, and I had to learn that quite quickly. But initially, I didn't take it well at all, and I did a couple of videos complaining about that, and I just found it difficult to understand, because anyone who's followed me on TikTok and anyone who follows me now on YouTube, I like to think that you can already get the impression that I'm an ex-criminal. I'm just trying to live a completely normal, crime-free, bullshit-free life now. I say exactly what I think. I'm completely upfront and honest about everything. Anybody who asks me a question, I tell them the truthful answer. And some people were not paying attention to that, watching videos and just slating me with comments about, various things. Some people have said that I'm glorifying my past criminality. I'm not at all, but I can't help the impression that some people choose to get. Anyway, so yeah, the trolling, it's all dealt with now. I do still get some negative comments. I pay no attention to them anymore. You can't unsee things, unfortunately, but I just block and delete, and it's forgotten in 30 seconds. So it's all part of the learning process. So during this time with TikTok, it turns out that people would be interested in my book that I've planned for 20 years now, and the book is currently in progress. I've had to go a route that I really didn't want to take in terms of ghostwriting, but I realised a few months ago that with the work that I do every day, various other kind of commitments, I never get a moment to myself. I did start writing the book again with help. I was dictating, and I had a good friend who is a transcriber. She was typing it all up for me for nothing, and then I would proofread and copy edit. But honestly, it just quickly turned out that there was no time to do this, and I wanted the book out. So I started crowdfunding. I've had an amazing response to that as well. I've been really fortunate. A lot of people have contributed. To me, it never matters how big or how small the contribution. I'm just eternally grateful because I want to get this book out, and it's going to be a good book. So it's in progress right now. I've still got quite a lot of more crowdfunding to do, but every day it moves forward a little bit, and I'm very grateful to everyone who's helped with that. Very grateful to everyone who's sent me gifts of clothes, food vouchers, all of that stuff. It's been amazing, and it's been very humbling, and I've learnt a lot from it as well. I've learnt a hell of a lot. You wouldn't necessarily think that that was possible from TikTok and now from YouTube, but yeah, I have learnt a lot. I have some really very strong support in what I'm doing, and to an extent I still don't exactly know what I'm doing, but I have some relatively modest ambitions. I would like to eventually be a podcaster myself. I would like to start doing some guest speaking, and I would like to try to intervene and help young lives that haven't gone down the same rabbit hole that I went down, but are looking like they might do. So talking to young people, just telling them what I've experienced and why it hasn't worked out brilliantly well for me, and ways in which they can avoid that would be great. So yeah, I'm now at my first Christmas out of prison for 10 years. It's Christmas morning. I had a rotten night last night with heartburn because I had a couple of beers, and I've been up most of the night. So that's not a great start to Christmas Day. I've still got heartburn now. But yeah, this video really is just to share a bit of how my year has been, and hopefully 2024 will be a good year for all of us. For me personally, I'd like to be a bit more settled over the coming months, feel a bit more settled. Going to keep pushing the book forward, get that out next year. I'm going to do more videos on YouTube and on TikTok. I've got myself into a position now where when I go back to work in January, I will be able to keep up to scratch and up to date on current affairs and things that are going on, things that people are interested in. And I'm going to start doing videos hopefully every day, just talking about the kind of the stuff that's really on the tip of everyone's tongue that day, that week. I have opinions on things, and I try to be relatively impartial, and I try to be open to both sides of the story and so on. So we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna start doing lives as well on YouTube and see how that goes. I've had some really positive comments already. I haven't done a huge amount on YouTube. I'm just kind of feeling my way into it. I'm not very tech savvy, so I kind of learn by process of elimination, trial and error, really. So bear with me, please. And yeah, I think that's more or less it. I could talk about quite a few other things, but this is now quite a long video. Let's just get that up and see how people feel about it. Obviously, look, just before I go, I should mention that most people on YouTube know and have seen that I did the Sean Atwood podcast. I had some really nice positive help with getting that sorted. So I would like to mention Simon and Rachel, who helped with that. That was really nice of them. Unfortunately, me and Simon have had various differences of opinion. He was helping me, but at the same time, he was, how can I put it? He was basically telling me how to live my life every day, and I couldn't really deal with that. He was putting too much pressure on me, do this, do that. I want to do these things at my own pace. If it doesn't pan out that way, then fine. That's down to me. I have no one to point the finger at, and I don't want anyone to point the finger at. So we'll see how this goes. But like I said, the idea is I'd like to start doing podcasts. I need to work my way into that. It's all new to me. I don't really understand it particularly well, but I will get there. I learn things fairly quickly. I'm not silly. I have a reasonable brain in my head. So 2024, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I do have plans, and I'd really like you to stay on board and see how it pans out. This is a journey. I used to be a criminal, a full-time, flat-out criminal. I'm not anymore. I work full-time in a good job, and I do this part-time. And the plan, my kind of ideal, would be that at some point in the next 12 months, this starts to just take over a bit from the job that I do every day. We'll see how that pans out, but I'm going to try now and start pushing it forwards a little bit more than I have been. I've been fairly quiet, and I get that you can't really afford to stand still. So I'm just going to sign off now, put this video on YouTube. I hope you're all having a great Christmas. It's unbelievable. It's pissing with rain outside. That wasn't meant to happen. But yeah, have a great time, everyone. I would say, if you work like I do, make sure you take advantage of the opportunity to just rest for a few days before work starts again. And yeah, have a great day with family, with friends, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.